2017. I'd like everyone to please stand and pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to briefly go over the agenda for this evening. The board, we have two guests here tonight. We have a member nominated for election to the Cemetery Commission along with the Cemetery Commissioner. We have a representative of the Upton Men's Club here to speak to us tonight. On our discussion items, we will be approving or discussing approval of financial policies and procedures, which is derived from a state grant which the town received approximately a year ago, and this has been in process for quite a while. We have year-end budget transfers to look at. We will be looking at approval of a rubber chip sealing contract. We have a request for a 5K road race in the town of Upton. We will look at the town manager review committee's mission statement for approval. We will be looking to motion, establish, and appoint a design selection committee for 3 Milford Street. Consider annual appointments to various boards and committees. We have a motion to appoint police officers, which is an annual, semi-annual in some cases. Motion to amend town manager's employment contract. We will be discussing the town hall acoustics, which we discussed at our last meeting. And a motion to join and maintain a regional substance abuse outreach program in the greater Milford area. At the conclusion of the open session, the board will go into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Exception 2, to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel. And then we will also reconvene out of that. We will go back into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Exception 6, to consider the purchase of real estate if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body. And we will adjourn only for purpose, we will come back in a regular session for purposes only of adjournment. Have I missed anything, gentlemen?
No, sir.
We have some other unanticipated subjects that we will be talking about toward the end of our agenda at this time. So I would ask, is the board prepared to motion to accept the meeting minutes of May 16th?
Yes, sir.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we accept the regular session meeting minutes from May 16 as written.
Second.
That's unanimous action of the board. At this time, we have our invited guests. Would I ask the Cemetery Commissioner, Mr. Glenn Fowler, to please come forward? And I would just read that the board has been advised that the voters at the annual town election held on May 1st, 2017 failed to elect a person to the one-year term of Cemetery Commission. As you may be aware, there was not a candidate for this position. Of the 44 write-in votes, one candidate received 4 votes. However, when this candidate was contacted, he declined the position. Thus, this is considered a failure to elect and creates a vacancy on the Cemetery Commission. The procedure for filing this vacancy under General Law, Chapter 41, Section 11, is for the remaining members of the board to give written notice of the vacancy to the Board of Selectmen, who with the remaining members of this board shall, after 1 week's notice, fill such vacancy by paper ballot. Notification of this vacancy may be made to the Board of Selectmen within 1 month, otherwise the Selectmen shall fill the vacancy. We have tonight Mr. Fowler with us as a member of the Cemetery Commission, and we have 3 members of the board, so we do have a quorum for purposes of appointment, or in some cases we call it election, to fill the vacancy of the position. The only thing I would question is, you state in your letter by paper ballot. I believe we can do that in open session. It's not required a paper ballot.
I'm glad to hear that, because I remember saying that.
Okay, well, it's in here just for clarification purposes. So at this time, does the chair of the Cemetery Commission have a candidate to propose for appointment or election to fill the one-year position?
Yes, it's my pleasure to nominate Jay Ferris as a candidate for 1 year.
Okay, we have a nomination. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a nomination, a second. Are there any other names for purposes of election to the Cemetery Commission? Hearing none, I will call a roll call vote. Please state your name and aye or nay.
Glenn Fowler, aye.
Gary Doherty, aye.
Steve Natalian, aye.
Robert Fleming, aye. It's majority unanimous action of both boards. And Jay, congratulations. Thank you for coming forward, by the way.
Yes.
We sincerely appreciate people's involvement in town government. Without volunteers, we don't do well, so. But thank you very much, and you two will get together, and
We will.
you know the process for being sworn in and so forth.
I'll indoctrinate him directly.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, next on our agenda, we have a representative from the Men's Club, Brad Video. Would you like to come forward? The purpose for tonight, if I can preclude the discussion, is the Upton Men's Club is going to be presenting a Country Fest, excuse me, Glenn, a Country Fest Upton, and I will turn it over to you at this time. For clarification, the board and the town manager do have information on this provided to us, so.
So the Upton Men's Club has come up with this concept for our next fundraiser, which, again, all proceeds go back to the town of Upton. We typically we used to have an auction every year, and that has kind of gone by the wayside, so we've been looking for another event to kind of replace that one. This idea came up. We've done a lot of research into this. The idea and the concept is to have a concert for country bands to take place on the Town Line Dairy Farm, there's a backfield on the farm property. There is parking on site, and we have some additional parking that was donated by Rocky Adeo, his farm up the street. I've spoken with Chief Bradley, Chief Goodale, and we went through kind of some back and forth on the parking issue because there is limited parking. We do have a plan now in place, which we received backing from the chief, his support on the new plan. The new plan involves no on-street parking on Dairy Drive or on William Street. We have 2 lots. We believe, based on the dimensions, that we can park approximately, what was the number, approximately 320 or something cars. Let me see if I can have that here. In my plan, 300 cars between both parking lots. And we have a plan in place for encouraging carpooling. To maximize the use of those parking spots, we will encourage people to purchase 4 tickets to get on the main parking right on the Town Line Dairy Farm, and that would include families of 4 and up. And then they would get a parking pass that would be color-coded, go on their rear view mirror, and then we will have signs up on the road that indicate where that parking is to match the color of the parking passes. Same thing with the second lot, which is about 800 to 1,000 feet away at the other farm. Those would be 2 tickets and up, and then of course first come first serve, for the rest of the tickets. We'll have limited parking passes available, and once they're up, then any other ticket purchasers will be going to BVT lot and be shuttled from that location. That's the fallout, the backup plan for once the lots are full. We estimate between 600 to 800 people. It's possible we could get 1,000. I'm not sure if we'll do that well the first year, but it's possible. But again, we do have mechanisms in place. Drop-offs will be allowed as well and encouraged, so there's no parking and no cars around for those ticket purchasers. The event also will have, besides the 4 bands, various attractions. We will have food, and then we're also applying for a 1-day liquor permit to sell beer and wine. I'm waiting for Chief Bradley to get back to me on some of the rules for that, but we fully expect to abide by all rules, requirements by the town for that permit.
Okay, thank you for the overview. I turn it over to my colleagues at this time to ask if they have any questions. Again, we have quite a bit of information here, but Gary?
No, I heard about this plan a couple months ago, and I'm actually surprised you're able to pull it off this quick. But everything I was concerned about was like basically number 12 through 16 in the package, the insurance, the details, and all that. And it looks like you're getting everything and all your ducks in a row, so.
Yes, we have spoken to our insurance provider. We will be obtaining insurance for the event that would cover us for any accidents that may happen to anyone attending the event. We will have a liquor liability insurance to cover the liability associated with alcohol. We will also be extending our insurance to both the Town Line Dairy Farm as well as Rocco's parking areas, the field in front of the barn, as additionally insured. Police detail, I've spoken in depth with Chief Bradley. We anticipate 3 to 4, paying for 3 to 4 police details, one possibly in Grafton, since the second parking lot is across the town line. And he was going to communicate with the chief of Grafton Police to coordinate that for us. Let's see what else. Fire EMS, like I said, I talked to Chief Goodale. He estimated we'll obviously need some assistance there, and they will offer that, and we will cover any costs associated with that. Code enforcement, we will have an event tent, and we will apply for a tent permit, just like we do for the fireworks festival, have it inspected by them as well. And then, of course, the Board of Health will apply for a food permit for that as well.
Steve?
One question I guess I had, which was in regard to, say, the liquor license and how the liquor will be served. Do you plan on doing it like a beer garden, as far as maybe keeping it in a contained area?
We expect that that's what the requirement's going to be. Like I said, I'm still waiting for the chief to get back to me on the rules, but my expectation is that's what will be the rules. We're fully ready to comply with that by enclosing an area and restricting those with that are 21 and older to that area. We will be selling tickets for beer. So actually, when people come into the event through the event gate, which is located on the property after they park, we will be checking IDs and giving out wristbands for alcohol consumption. We will also have one separate booth where we will be selling tickets for food and alcohol. And that person will basically, they will go to that place to purchase, and then they would go to the beer tent to hand in their tickets to exchange for the beer. The bartenders, I have 4 bartenders lined up, all tip certified, or will be at the time. They're already scheduled for the training, at least 3 of them, one of them already is trained. They will be serving, but because of the way we're doing the purchasing, they won't have to handle any money. They can just focus on the serving and making sure everyone is, good to drink and behave and all that.
Makes sense. Sure.
That brings up a question, if you don't mind.
Yes, go
Are
ahead.
you gonna allow like just open bags or like coolers, or is it gonna be limited?
No coolers, thanks, that's a good question. We will not be allowing any coolers on site. There will not be permitted to tailgate on site and in either of the parking lots. We will be policing that area with members of the men's club. So there will be no tailgating allowed at any of the parking locations, and no coolers allowed. People will be allowed to bring in picnic blankets and chairs, pretty much, that's it. Or maybe a Frisbee or 2 or something like that.
Beach ball.
Beach ball, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Not to be the stick in the mud, but if this gets to up to 800 people, 3 to 4 police, I'm uncomfortable with that fewer police officers, that big a crowd. I would prefer to defer in favor of more police coverage for an event like this. Obviously, you are going to have personnel from the men's club surveying and policing the area as well, but they don't have the authority that takes place, and it only takes one event to ruin it for everyone.
Sure.
So I would ask that you speak to the chief. I did already, the chief of police, and have a discussion with him. And if we need to work out some type of a plan for more coverage, we're not in any way trying to inhibit your potential to raise money, but the reality is we've got to look at the public safety. And it's not just for the people present at that, it's for those people that lead the event and how they lead. So I'd ask that you look at that. And again, I spoke to Chief Bradley about it, if you could follow up with him. It's not for us to take any action at this time because there's too many outstanding issues. Certainly with the one-day liquor license and other things, we want feedback from the police department and chief in general. So
I have spoken to Chief Bradley about that. He recommended 4. Perhaps he's changed since that discussion, but I will be talking with him once he brings back the rules regarding the liquor permit.
because if it got up to close to 1,000 people, you got 1 police officer per 250 people.
Absolutely.
That's kind of excessive, but
Agreed.
other than that, I mean, personally, I will just say I commend you for the effort, because we're a little selfish, because all the money you raise comes back to our town, so benefits everyone in that respect, so glad to see that.
Yeah, I would just say that Our hopes are in line with the town's hopes. We want it to be a safe event. We will do whatever it takes to ensure that, and whatever requirements that the chief puts on us, we're willing to meet them.
Okay. Town manager, any questions?
No, I don't have anything. I think it was covered. I know the chief and I have spoken about it, and particularly about concerns over the alcohol consumption, but it looks like that's being addressed. I know the chief and I will be discussing this a little bit more. I think it is good that a beer garden is being considered. That makes it certainly a lot easier to control the premises.
Okay. Well,
So I will be submitting, once I speak with the chief about the requirements that he came back from learning about the alcohol permit, I will submit event manager application as well as the one-day liquor license and complete those in full.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll be in touch. It's time for the manager's report. It's the only reason I'm closing. Yeah. All right, so we'll defer that then. Next on our agenda is recognition. I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Board of Selectmen to commend the members of the BFW and the American Legion for an outstanding Memorial Day exercise. As we say, it is atypical small-town America, but it's very emotional to see that the citizens that turn out and the reading of the names and the impact that it has to our citizens at large. It was a great event, and Glenn, thank you for filming it. I did go online and see it. It came out very well. It's a true, really a testament to what people in this town are willing to do to recognize on a day like Memorial Day. So, turnout was great, and everyone did a great job, so thank you very much. Excuse me, do we need to recess here? No, okay. All right, next on our agenda is the financial policy and procedure. I have before me a 77-page document. This is derived from a state grant that was done under a town compact by the Baker-Polito administration. Lieutenant Governor Polito came to Upton and awarded the compact agreement, and basically what it did, it funded an opportunity for the town of Upton to create or develop something which normally we wouldn't have the finances or the ability to do. And through this grant, we received a financial policies procedures manual, which, as I say, is 77 pages long. It's very comprehensive. We received assistance from the state, and it is totally funded by the state. So I turn it over to my colleagues at this point. I have made some comments. I would prefer just to turn my comments over to the town manager to look at. They're basically checks and balances as to authority, chain of command, where it shows that the town department head has the right to. I, in many cases, would prefer that get channeled through the town manager, or in some cases, even Board of Selectmen approval before enacted. Yes?
Well, I would just say that if you have any comments, I know you've all been pretty thorough going over this, and it's a pretty lengthy document. If you could get those to me as soon as possible, I can forward those to the consultant. They can be incorporated into a final draft, and as we're coming up on the end of the fiscal year, I think we'd really need to finalize this at your next meeting.
Soon enough? There you go. It's highlighted in yellow, and
Great.
the pages of question are written on the front, so you don't
Okay,
have to-
oh, wow, make it nice and easy for me.
I tried to have detail. Are you prepared for the
Yes.
manager's report? Please.
I think we have a member of the fire department on their way for an additional matter for the agenda, unknown to the chair. The first thing I would mention is that last Wednesday, we had Student Government Day, and we had third graders here, and it was a lot of fun, although I think that the next day, one topic of discussion was how exhausting it was. It was great to talk to the young students. Hopefully, they got somewhat of a flavor of what goes on in the town hall, and I think it was quite an experience for everybody, especially for me. I haven't been through one of those before, but it was a lot of fun. The Student Government Day, and also I should say that it started out with Kelly McElroy, the town clerk, running a town meeting. And that was a lot of fun also, especially since one of the items, there were 2 items on the warrant, passed by 1 vote, so that was democracy in action. We're hoping to find out, Northbridge is considering the intermunicipal agreement on the conservation agent, so I'm hoping that that's going to be finalized with Northbridge. There were just some minor revisions that needed to be made, incorporating into the agreement what made up the rate. And we're also working on the intermunicipal agreement with Blackstone and Bellingham for the nursing services. I'm hoping to have that done and have those towns get back to us on the revisions to those agreements. Basically the same as the conservation agent, just the new rate and what goes into the rate. It seems like all the towns, from what I know, are very happy with those intermunicipal agreements. Working on the grant with the Mass Office on Disability for the transition plan. I did get an estimate from the Center for Living and Working on what the cost of the transition plan would be. I'm also going to get some assistance from Central Mass Regional Planning to go over the grant. They're familiar with this particular grant program. One of the staff people there went to the information session in Boston. So we'll try and get that in by June 15th, hopefully to get early in line for consideration, though my understanding is, I don't know if Mass Office on Disability has been definite about this, that the application period for fiscal 18 grants will actually begin July 15th, but we want to get it in early. That's what I was advised to do, so we'll have that done shortly. Last week, Ken Glowacki, the town treasurer, and I met with representatives from Verizon to talk to them both about service in town, and I also brought up the issue of double poles, which has been something many in town have been concerned about for some time. Just to deal with double poles first, I haven't heard from Verizon yet on whether they've transferred the wires from some of their poles so the double poles can be taken out, but I did get an updated list from the new contact person, Miss Anna Lucy, with Charter. They also have wires that need to be moved on some of the poles, so they have about 11 poles that they have successfully moved the wires on. That will go to National Grid so they can begin work on taking out some of those double poles in time if the board wants. Don't need to get into the details now, but I can send you the list of the poles that Charter has finished with. They were the next ones on the list to remove the wires, and then it can go to National Grid for removal. As far as the Verizon service, I don't know whether you've seen articles. I just printed off one that's online that you can go to. What was explained to us is that Verizon is involved in a big project in Boston, New York also, but Boston locally, with FiOS and what they call One Cable. And they are going to be waiting. It seems they're a little overbuilt at this point, and they're going to be waiting, which seems like 2 years, to see how well this particular service works in Boston before they really go to any additional towns and beginning expanding services. So it was a little discouraging, I guess is the word, that it's going to be a while before we can expect anything from Verizon. I know that there have been some plans that have been talked about, maybe the town coming on. I know this is just speculation about maybe helping to improve some of the stations in town, but it was explained that that wouldn't really work either because then the wires still have to be upgraded. So we discussed a number of things, but I just wanted to update the board, and I know that we were contacted by people in town about improvements of Verizon service. The word that we got, it's going to be years before they're looking at expanding their network. They're really going to see what happens in Boston before they get to the Uptons of the world. We're going to be participating and renewing our involvement in the fuel contracts with CMRPC, who contacted about that, diesel and fuel oil. I also participated in the first round of interviews for the fire EMT positions that were funded, and we're going to have the next round on June 15th. And then tomorrow, several meetings. We have the walkthrough on 3 Milford Street. The RFP has gone out, RFQ has gone out on that, very successful. Of course, it being over $25,000 for a design contract, it has to go into the central register, and it's really the central registers that attracted the interest. We've sent out over 30. The town clerk was very helpful with that also in assembling the list and getting everything manageable, so I wasn't sending out 30 separate emails. So that is, tomorrow is a walkthrough at 3 Milford Street, and also a staff meeting tomorrow, usually once a month, to follow up on selectmen's meetings. That's all I have.
Okay, good. Any questions, gentlemen?
One quick question regarding the FiOS question there. I think Milford has FiOS right now. Is the same one cable system that they're trying to install in Boston what they're currently running in Milford, or is this newer technology than what's currently in Milford?
Good question. I don't know. I'll check. I have a feel, my sense is that what's happening in Boston is something new and untested, and they want to see how this is going to work out, but I'll check.
Any other questions? That's all. The chair did some quick math, and now I think I understand. Okay.
The fire department's
Yes,
coming.
I did some quick math. Great. We have before us, gentlemen, a request to approve year-end budget transfers. Under Mass General Law, anything under $5,000 or 3% of the debt line item, we can act on within 60 days at the close of the annual town meeting. And we have before us roughly 10 or 11 transfers where there is a surplus in funds and one in need in others. So I turn this over to the board for discussion and/or motion. Do we have any questions, Gary?
I was just gonna make a statement. I just wish we had a little bit more time to talk to some of the department heads. I think some of these line items are just vague, like what the expense is. So I just wanna make sure they're buying stuff that they need now.
I think that's an excellent point. I know that the emails went out some time ago, and this is another thing where the Kelly, the town clerk, has been extremely helpful. Some of these actually just came in today. But that's an excellent point about trying to get some additional information on these. Also, I would just point out, and how much I hate to correct the chair, but
No, you do.
with the Modernization Act, some of those limitations on the 3% and the 5,000 no longer apply.
That's correct, they changed it. Thank you, I stand corrected by Bob One. Okay, well done. Are we prepared to act on this? And I would make a suggestion, just for consideration, that we act on this, and then we ask town manager to get us the facts behind the request and what the transfers are going to be used for.
And then definitely have our, for next year.
Well, we might have some more this year. It's potentially possible, yeah.
And this will go from us to FinCom as well, so if we found that there was a problem, I suppose we could notify FinCom?
They meet Thursday.
They meet
We
Thursday.
both need to approve it. If I read it correctly.
Yeah. Are we prepared to motion for this?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Please?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we accept the year-end transfers as submitted.
Second motion?
That's unanimous action of the board, and the town manager will follow up to ensure that. Okay, next we have a rubber chip seal contract, as I get tongue-tied. We have before us a contract. I'll turn this over to town manager because we did have citizen input relative to some proposals brought forth, and I know at our request you contacted the director and the supervisor as for more input, so...
Yes, I did, and I believe it's Elm Forest Street that they're looking at, and they feel that because of the construction of the road, this particular resurfacing is called for, not any additional cost. And also, as they pointed out, and they're using specifications similar to the state, the contractor will be held responsible for the condition of the road up for a year, so there will be some recourse if there are any issues. But after speaking with the DPW director and the highway supervisor, I'm comfortable, and they're convinced me. I mean, they're very definite that what they're doing is the best thing to do in the best interest of the town, and I would agree and make the recommendation that the contract is approved.
Gentlemen, comments?
No, sir.
Comments? No. Okay, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I authorize Mr. Reed to execute a chip seal contract with Allstate Asphalt in the amount of $139,500.
Second motion?
That's unanimous action of the board. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next on our agenda is a request for a road race. The Milford Area Chamber of Commerce is requesting approval for a road race on July 29th, and we are provided with all the backup documentation as well as the route to be taken for the race and the times of. They will conclude with an awards breakdown between 10:45 and 11:30 the same day. Our real concern is obviously the road race, and it needs board's approval. So I did open up for debate. Gary?
No, sir, just need the signature, department heads to sign off.
Okay,
Seems
so
pretty straightforward.
if we could make motion with contingent upon approval by department heads?
Mr. Chairman, I authorize Milford Area Chamber of Commerce a 5K road race on Saturday, July 29, 2017, pending department head approval.
Second motion?
It's unanimous action of the board. Yep, that's okay. We can sign that later at the conclusion of the meeting. Next, as you know, the Board of Selectmen appointed a Town Manager Act Review Committee. I know they've had a number of meetings. They brought before us a mission statement, which the board needs to approve for them to go forward with it. I would I'd ask the board to discuss this, and then I have some comments to make relative to it. Any comments to the mission statement?
No, I think it kind of sums up what we tasked them to do.
Yep, pretty straightforward.
Okay, could we have a motion then?
Mr. Chairman, my motion to accept the Town Manager Act Review Committee mission statement as written.
Second motion?
That's unanimous action. I would like to advise the committee, I've received feedback, and although the board is trying to stay objective, it's my understanding there's been a lot of discussion that goes outside the parameters of the Town Manager Act, and remind them that their purpose is, under their mission statement, to stay respective to that issue, and not to go into other areas of discussion that serves no purpose, and is outside the parameters of their mission. Okay? Yes, Mr. Manager.
Could I just follow up on that, maybe to be a little more specific? My understanding is, and it's not just this particular committee, but a lot of general discussion across town on some of the wage increases that were given at town meeting, where I think the chair and I discussed those at length and explained the process. I'm not really sure what those wage increases or the wage increases in the town manager's office have to do with the revision of the Town Manager Act, but I think whether it's members of that committee or anyone who has questions remaining about this, I think the appropriate thing to do would be to contact me.
Yes, clearly stated, emphatically, please contact the town manager if you have questions. That is the proper source. Thank you. Okay, next we have appointments at our request. We had solicited persons to serve on the Design Selection Committee for 3 Milford Street, which many of us know as the former Holy Angels Parish. We have 4 submitted requests here. James Brochu, Kelly McElrath, Stephen Rakeden, and Brett Simons have all submitted. We have their applications along with their signatures and requests for appointment. As you know, this appointment would be for a shorter window of time. It's our intent to go back to town meeting in October, so this committee would really serve until the latter part of September. Are there any discussions relative to any of the applicants on this? Gary?
No, sir.
None.
Steve? I will say I'm impressed with all of the candidates. They all carry, many of them have served in other advisory and committees and feasibility. So very pleased to see these same people come forward. One of whom I will compliment, wrote a very good letter to the editor in the town crier, Mr. Rakeden. Thank you. Couldn't have said it better myself. So are we prepared to make motion to this committee?
Yes, sir.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we appoint Kelly McElroy, Jim Brochu, Steve Raketen, and Brett Simons to the 3 Milford Street feasibility study, effective until October's town meeting.
October, sure.
I second the motion?
That's unanimous action. Again, thank you for coming forward on this. Next, we have consider appointments to various boards. One, we have, first, after our last meeting, we received a letter of resignation from James Bates Jr. as an associate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I know Jim served on that for a number of years. He has also worked with Worcester County Regional Planning and a number of other committees within the town. Regretfully to see that he has resigned, requested resignation from this. Is there any discussion on this before?
No, sir.
Could we have a motion to accept with regret, please?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept James Bates, resignation from the zoning board, Whitborough.
Second the motion.
And to be clear, that's James Bates Jr., you've got it, right. Okay, that's unanimous action of the board. Now we have before us a request for appointment to the Zoning Board of Appeals Associate Member, Robert Humes Jr. This was submitted, he's provided backup, and there is additional letters and correspondence in here as well. So, does the board have any discussion on this request for appointment? None? Gary, you prepared the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we appoint Robert Humes to the zoning board of appeals.
Associate member.
Associate member. Is that
Robert Humes?
expired in 2017, maybe?
Yeah, for a one-year term to
So
expire.
1 year, okay. Robert Humes Jr. Second the motion.
And to be clear, I'll make that unanimous with the stipulation to reinforce that it's till May of 2018. Thank you. We have another one that's still outstanding, so we have next a motion to appoint police officers to the Upton Police Department. Is terms for appointment are up. This is quite lengthy.
Kathy Worsham, is it?
Oh, I've got that, it's coming up, I'm sorry, I don't have it in the same sequence, but, the police department, we have a request here for members of the police. There is quite a list here, I don't know, I will, whatever favor, whichever way you prefer to state.
Do the 3-year term first? And the
Sure, please.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we appoint Chief Mike Bradley Jr., Bruce Rivard, Alan Sear, Lisa Vass, Carl Ambasini, Eric Major, Mike Luciapini, Mike Benjamin, Isaac Paxton, Matt Rankins to the police department for a 3-year term.
Second the motion.
That's unanimous action.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we appoint Robert J. Miller, Thomas B. Stockwell, Paulo Diana, Mike Bradley Jr., Victoria Burnham, Roberta Lamoth, Patrick Sheridan, John Bergstrom, and then we already said her. Heidi Schultz, Mary Ellen, or Palmieri, and Tyler Coburn to 1 year to the Upton Police Department.
Second the motion, but I thought Nicholas Palmieri resigned.
He did, his wife's
This is
name.
Mary Ellen.
This is
Oh.
his wife's name. Yeah.
Mother.
I shouldn't assume it's his wife, I take that
It's his
back.
mother.
Huh?
It's his mother.
It's his mother,
It's mother, okay.
My correction, I'm sorry. And with the stipulation that these all have different titles and capacities within the department, but to save time,
Second the motion.
it's unanimous action, and thank you. Now we have the request for the appointment to the Historic Commission. Gary?
No comment, sir.
Steve?
No comments, no?
Okay, this position comes recommended, as have the others. Would you prepare to make motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we appoint Catherine Washham to the Historic Commission for a term expiring in May 2018.
Second the motion.
That's unanimous action. Now we have one, this is the present town manager for an extension to his contract, and after he corrected me earlier, I don't really know, but first of all, I'm going to embarrass you a little. Thank you for what you've done so far. I'm very impressed with the fact you jumped in with both feet on the ground, done a great job. We anticipated filling the position at an earlier time, but due to the process and the way it worked, we are going to need your services, and you have agreed to serve till July 28th, am I correct?
Yes,
Tentatively?
Okay. And,
well, unless shorter.
and this requires an agreement. We will get into the process, and both town manager and I, or the board members, will explain the process for the town manager next, but we have this before us. This is a standard terms of contract to renew, to extend to July 28, 2017. Do we have any discussion?
No.
Okay, I'd ask for a motion, and then we will sign at the end of the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we extend the contract between the town of Upton and Mr. Robert Reed until July 28, 2017.
Second the motion.
And the only correction I'll make is that's Robert T. Reed. We'll find out, I think it's Thomas, but, okay.
Thomas.
It's unanimous action of the board, thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's our pleasure. While we're on the subject, we should explain, I'll let town manager jump in. This Saturday, the search committee will be meeting with candidates for the position of town manager. They are going to spend the entire day reviewing the candidates. They are allowed to do that in executive session, and they will be vetting the candidates and screening them for general purposes. Then they will make a recommendation of finalists to the Board of Selectmen. And next Monday, a week from today, at 10 a.m., this board will meet in open session to review those, interview and discuss with those finalists the position of town manager. It's the board's pleasure at the conclusion of that review and interview what our process will be, whether we wish to make appointment at that time or defer it to another time. That's our prerogative, but certainly we are near the final stages of this process. And the screening committee, to the compliments to them, I know they've done a lot of work. Town manager, I don't know, what was the initial amount, the first round of candidates applying for the position?
Well, I think they got over 70.
I think it was 77 or something.
Yeah.
And they've now narrowed down to
6.
under 10. So the other thing, to be very clear, this board stated objectivity when we appointed the screening committee, and to this date, this board's had no action whatsoever or involvement with the search firm at
Yes.
all.
Yeah, and I think that was the agreement with the search committee up front. There'll also be a team from MRI, the consultants here, and they'll be interviewing candidates at the same time that the search committee is, and then they'll swap. I think that, you know, they may be looking at two different things. I think that naturally the MRI group, made up of former town managers, will be really looking at the technical abilities in depth with the candidates, and then they'll switch off. And as the chairman said, at the end of their interviews on Saturday, the two groups will be getting together and determining a final 3 to recommend to the selectmen for next Monday.
Okay, any discussion, gentlemen? We're all set for Monday?
Yes, sir.
All set?
Yeah, and we will be in open session by law. So we are duly posted, correct?
Will be.
Yeah, okay. Just double checking everything. We'd hate to have that go wrong. Okay, next on our discussion is the town hall acoustics. I'll turn this over to town manager. I know you've had some communication on this, so.
We did, the town clerk had given me a lead on a firm that had been consulted, I think, when the renovation of this building had been done, and I contacted that firm. They're familiar with the building, of course. They're familiar with the large room, the large meeting room, and I think has been the source of the issues or the complaints about the acoustics in the town hall where candidates' night was held. We have received an initial proposal and cost of about $2,800 for a study. That's not the fix, that's just for them to look at the building, to do what they do, being acoustic engineers, to also somewhat take into consideration the public address system that's used in that large room, and then come up with recommendations for the fix, which would, I'm certainly far from being an acoustical engineer, but what I understand is there'll be room treatments, acoustic panels that are put up along the building. Certainly would be looking at something that complements that building, that room, and the nice job that was done on the renovation. There was also some discussion about including this building, this room, Little Town Hall, so I had written to the firm about including this room in the proposal estimate. I don't have that number yet, but if the board wants to continue with that, I'll have that for the next meeting, and you can decide whether or not you want to pursue that as part of the study.
Gentlemen?
Do you hear a lot of complaints about this one? I hear more complaints about the timing of the voices versus the faces.
I had just heard that it had come up, that it was a consideration and a concern, so.
Personally, I've never thought that there was a problem with this room, so I wouldn't want to spend the money myself. Again, if there was a lot of people with an issue with it, that'd be one thing. Again, as Mr. Doherty said, it's more of a timing between the video and the audio. That seems to be the problem, not the actual sound or the quality of the town.
But that study might find out it's just the software or something that we can fix too, so.
Could we go on the assumption that you will contact the individual and at least get us a price for this room? and
Yes.
we can debate it then at our next meeting.
Right.
And I'd also ask if we could find, because it would have to come from trust, whether we could use beautification or
Yeah.
we'd have to use the William Knowlton Trust. Those are the only two trusts that would seem to be sufficient for funding this process.
Yeah, we might also try some other balances. There might be some money left over in the construction of the building.
Good point.
But also wanted to see about getting some estimates on the fix so that,
Right.
you'll know just what you're getting into. I think, it's certainly going to be 5 figures in order to be able to satisfactorily treat that room.
Well, that would be my assumption. That would be for the voters in October to decide if they want to move forward with it.
Yeah, I think that the study is the way to go. I mean, when I started thinking about an RFQ or an RFP for an acoustic study, I mean, I have no idea what the benchmarks are. I have no idea what to set as a standard or what would satisfy voters or viewers. So I think it's appropriate to leave it to an engineer to come in and deal with that in the way that they deal with those types of situations.
Okay. Any questions? No?
None.
So at our next meeting, we'll cover that. Thanks. We have a request to join and maintain a regional substance abuse program, opiate and outreach program. This came up at the annual town meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but where we were posted, I did ask my colleagues if we were in favor of deferring from the annual town meeting for the board to take action on this on our own. We remember that? And the amount is $7,542 to belong to this. Basically, it's a regional outreach program based in the town of Milford, and it provides regional substance navigation. As you know, the town of Upton has an opiate task force which meets periodically and is directly affiliated with this group. And I mean directly, with members on our opiate task force, actually one being employed within this group. So all our towns are tied together. There is no pocket for substance abuse. It's statewide, so. So any comment on this, gentlemen?
No, sir. I just forget the funding source.
Has anybody had any feedback? I mean, do you feel like it's working?
Well-
Have people taken advantage of the program, or residents, so to say?
Yes, there is a person of contact that has a 24/7 phone number for this purpose. And again, it's based in Milford, so a lot of it feeds in that direction. But the town of Upton derives benefit directly from it, as do others. So it's definitely worth it for us. And for this amount of money, this is a crisis in our society we need to address. So
Okay.
I'm just in favor. I would say the William Knowlton Trust, we have approximately $85,000 of unexpended income in there that we could appropriate from, to the 7542. So,
Yeah, I'll step for a motion, sir.
yes, please.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to join and maintain the Regional Substance Abuse Outreach Program in Greater Milford for the amount of $7,542 to be paid from the William Knowlton Trust Fund.
Second the motion?
That's unanimous action, thank you. And I'm sure the opiate task force will be pleased to know. That concludes our topic, but we have a surprise presentation, and I will step aside, and Brian, is the chief here, or are you going to be?
He's not available this evening.
Chief is not available, so I would ask everybody to come forward, because I did the math. It took me a moment to wonder, why are you people sitting in the back of our meeting on a rainy Monday night? But I know, but I'd ask everyone to please come up forward, and we can introduce. First of all, I'd ask this gentleman and this lady with the two nice children that have behaved so well. I am sorry I forgot your name. We had it last meeting. It was acknowledged, but if I may, please pull up a seat. Yeah. So we get that kid with curly hair on camera. I'm jealous of curly hair, you know.
He's a cutie.
That's a joke.
He's a cutie.
I'd like to read this. On Tuesday, March 9th at 4:05 a.m., dispatch received a 911 call from a family on Juniper Road requesting an ambulance. Upton Fire EMS EMT Edward Bergman, who lives in the area, responded to the scene while paramedic Blake Montaguin and FFEMT Anthony Savasi, better known as Tony, responded from the station with Med 1 ambulance. Upon arrival, these members determined that the 39-week pregnant patient was experiencing symptoms consistent with a possible life-threatening situation for both herself and her child. They made the decision to not go to the closest hospital, but rather go to the most appropriate hospital for the situation, which in this case was St. Vincent's Hospital in Worcester. While transporting the mother and their unborn child, she received advanced life support treatment from our paramedic. Staff at St. Vincent's Hospital stated that the decision likely saved not only the life of the patient, but also the child. And how do you put it in words stronger than that? So I'm going to step aside and Brian, let you speak to this. This is not something the board should take any recognition for. It's all about you people here tonight, so
Please, this is not something I take recognition for. This is really the crew that was on. Blake is on duty tonight. Anthony was coming for training, so I was able to lasso them to get them down here. It's just really about their training, their recognition of, not just making the decision, let's go to Milford, taking a look at what's going on and saying she's stable enough, she needs to go to a hospital that's better suited for her condition. Something we do all the time, usually for trauma patients. In this case, they made the right decision for a mom and her child. And when these things happen, we're very happy. And when I was able to meet Mom a couple of weeks ago, I asked her if she, to be available to come, and I'm more than happy to.
okay, although we're surprised, we're more than happy. Could I ask you to turn that child around so Mr. Fowler can get that little
That way.
man, little boy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, there it is.
There you go. That little gentleman is, well, according to the, what?
This is Otto.
Okay, is here as a result of your actions, and that's very commendable. I wish I had known earlier, we would have done this a little more in ceremony, but looking the smile on your faces, that certainly says it all.
That's Steve Boyard right there.
Yeah, so, I'd like to personally say thank you, gentlemen. And maybe we'll get somebody from the local press to do a little bio on this. Make these, don't want to exclude this gentleman here, make them both very famous. What's his name?
His name's August.
August. Hi.
Augie for short.
Say hi.
Hello. Yeah, I scare kids. I scare a lot of people. But thank you for coming in. It was a surprise when you were sitting in the back. I'm trying to, it's not often we get young people come in with children, but it's very nice.
I want to thank these guys because it was close call, so
Yeah.
it was very important.
Very appreciative, obviously.
That, everybody made the right decision that night, and it turned out well. So.
Yeah. Tough night.
So thank you,
I'm
guys.
sure. At the time, wow, yeah.
Great.
So, thank you. I'll ask the town manager to follow up with the chief, but certainly commendations are in order for your actions. Okay?
Great job.
I want to shake your hand. Do you know, there's a story behind this gentleman here. When I was in the reserve in the Coast Guard, he was a young man, he used to watch us get underway for search and rescues. And someday he was going to grow up and do search and rescue. So, here he is, right? Yes. You were a young man, not that young, but you were young? Yeah. Okay, but thank you very much.
Nice meeting you.
And thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the birthday of your son.
These are the things we love to do. Yeah. Bye. There's a hello.
That's so good.
To the town manager, I'd ask you to follow up with the chief and make sure that commendations are in order for that. Very nice, again, a surprise, but wow. As I stated, the board will go in executive session. There are just some other areas of mail and correspondence that we received this week. One is we have an individual that has applied to the town for insurance coverage, and there is a conflict with our policy, and the issue that this individual has raised, and the board hasn't had time to deliberate on it because we'd really be in violation of law, but we have received a letter from the individual. We've also received correspondence and communication through the town manager from council. Could you explain, excuse, you need us? You need,
I was just going to explain.
oh, can you do that later, because we're in the middle of something?
Oh, yeah, yeah, you're,
Yeah,
so.
all right. So, this is called ad lib. Okay, could you go into detail as to your conversation, or not detail, but any conversation with council relative to this?
Well, specifically, I just wanted to know, I mean, the policy was adopted in 2014. I was just asking council to review the situation and see what there are any legal issues. Certainly, there are not any legal issues on the part of the town with the adoption of the policy, or how the policy was approved, or how the policy was disseminated. Everything that the town did was proper. As the chair said, I think there are still some things to be discussed, still some issues to be looked at. There's a history here, so, that was the gist of my conversations with council, and certainly everything has been done properly by the town with the adoption of the policy.
Okay, I would like to ask the board to have time to absorb this, and if we could discuss it again at our next meeting, and see if there's any way, I don't want to get too far into this because it's new in our packet, and we haven't really had time to go into it, but, you know, this is one of those things that comes up that no one planned on. So if we could address it at our next meeting? You comfortable
Yes.
with that? Okay, please. And Sandy, if you could put it on our agenda. And another thing I have, there has been conversation, and I had this, and Steve, I have to explain, this was a conversation I had with the town clerks, on the town clerk's position, going back probably 2 months ago before the election. And one of the concerns is that the town manager's job responsibility is beginning to expand considerably, and the job description has not been updated. And where Mr. Reed, Bob One, is an interim town manager, he's been involved, but this is something that's going to pass on to the new town manager who comes in, and the impact on this. So what I've done is I've taken a draft, and you'll see it in red, of proposed changes to this, probably the more significant ones, and this, again, this is draft. So to be very clear, there's no action on this. I did have discussion with the town clerk for input, and a couple of things that would presently are being done, but to one thing, we have an agency that helps monitor the town hall. That agency's term is expired of, help me out, their name? Methuen. Their term's expired. We need somebody to oversee as facility director for all the buildings in the town. It's certainly difficult for the town manager with all the issues on the town manager's desk, so this would be an expansion of responsibility, specifically when, and although it's supposed to be not to one person in particular, this individual certainly has been extensively involved in a lot of feasibility and changes, this town hall being the biggest, chairing this feasibility committee for this, so has extensive knowledge relative to facility management. There are also changes in here as expanding some financial responsibility, working closer with the town manager to perform assist. I heard tonight probably 4 or 5 times town manager had mentioned the town clerk's assistance in different matters, so.
She's been a huge help in a number of ways, particularly with the facilities.
So I think it's time to revisit this job description, which once we accept and propose, would go to the personnel board for review and consideration on their part. So I just asked if you could take this, and at the next meeting, we could reconsider and readdress this. Thank you.
Yes.
I'll get a copy for your records too, I'm sorry. Okay, also, we have another issue that's come up, and that's Kiwanis Beach Road as a public right-of-way. There's been some discussion with the planning board and the DPW director.
Yes, well, I did talk to the secretary for the planning board. I'm not sure they would really get that much involved in this until it's being considered, or perhaps even after it becomes a public way. But I also spoke with the DPW director, and whether or not there should be some investigation considering how that road was built before the town accepts it. Naturally, if you're looking at subdivision roads, they would have certain standards applied to them. They'd be monitored, so you'd know how those roads were built before they are accepted by the town, and you're not accepting a problem. We don't know that about Kiwanis Beach Road, so I'll be following up with the DPW director, whether they need to do borings, et cetera, so the town will know. But on the other hand, my understanding is the town already does quite a bit of maintenance there, already snow plowing, so there would be access to the facility. I'm not sure how much of a difference it would make, but right now I think we're looking at that and also the construction of the road.
Okay, more to follow. Okay. That's basically what I had, and some additional topics as well. Is there anything, Gary?
Those are,
Steve?
Nothing, no.
Okay. No, you?
I'm all set, thank you.
Anybody in the audience? Yes. Please stand up, state your name.
Yeah, Rachel Bowles.
Yeah.
I'll make it quick because I think you're going into executive session.
Yes, we are.
right? Okay. My name is Pamela Goodwin. I reside at 4 Hartford Avenue North, and we're in the Coach Road Apartments. And I just have a couple of questions that I need to figure out who to go to. On Mother's Day, my car was demolished, and so was another residence by a tree that fell. I'll pass these around because I don't think any of you people were present at the time.
You sent us an email with pictures.
Right. So that's what they look like in color, and then I wrote on the back. So it took me over 3 weeks to get out of a rental and into a car of my own. I had sent an email, I think, to the BOS, the Board of Health, and some other people, the Chief of Police and so forth. So because Jim Brocher did a tree summary report, had Vinnie Roy do a tree summary, and that was dated, he sent something on November 9th, 2016. He's the former chairman. And he had Mr. Roy do, which trees are at risk, high risk, moderate risk, and so forth. Mostly as a courtesy, because that is state authority property, it's housing authority property. So this began in 2016, when the trees became concerned and one other car was already in, like it was mirror locked off, the hood was gone in, that tree uprooted. So that went before the commissioners over there, and in the meantime, we got the letter from the 3 lawyers out in Wakefield saying that this is prime property, you're parking there at your own risk. There's 17 to 20 cars that are parking on the abutting property. We all got this notice from the attorneys that are involved with Raymond over there, who runs the prime. So we all got a notification saying they would tow cars, put up barricades, and we were parking there at our own risk. This came out to each and every resident there with no letter of explanation from the person running the place or any commissioners. When it came time to turn in the police report, I took the report over. Jan and I both did it. It's a very comprehensive thing. I don't know if you've ever been in a car crash, but the RMV gets something, the insurance gets something, and so forth. At that point in time, I got an email from the director saying to get my rental car off the lawn, off of there. There was 4 cars that were affected. This one was parked right on the grass in front of that apartment. The other gentleman parked his car there. I put my rental car way over. I called the fire chief and the police chief. Well, he said he talked to the chief of police, Mr. Bradley. And I said, my intention is to put the car in a safe place.
May I just, you're losing me just a little bit. So you're parking behind the actual Coach Road Apartments?
No,
and the
I
property but where the vehicles were parked, is that in fact the neighboring property?
Oh, yes.
So it is. So, okay. So as time goes forward, they are probably not going to allow you to park there anymore?
I just heard recently they'll be putting up barricades.
Okay. So that's going to be off limits.
Right. See,
Okay.
originally in 1968, they garaged 9 cars. I mean, we're talking almost horse and buggy days.
Sure.
So now there's 40 units, but there's only, like, there's 22, I think, approximately 22 cars. Many of them are impaired people with their placard. Many of us don't have a placard, but we deserve to park there because we have a car, we pay rent. And so what happened was Lieutenant Rivard said to me, she can't tell you to get off of the premises. So he took us over and he said, you can park over here. So Jan and I were both parking our rental cars on prime property, but where there's no trees. And if you visualize the intersection, there's a section of grass, and that's where he said, you're parking here tonight, I want you to shoot off an email and ask her where a safe place is to park any car. My car, rental car. I couldn't afford to have the rental car also eat that cost, because I really got in a lot of trouble with a 2012 Fit, that they would not give me money. My insurance would not pay for another replacement.
I've got to bring you to focus. What is the issue to the
So
board?
the issue is that people were parking here, and I hear from the fire chief that Pat Roach, Betty Roach's husband,
You don't go down the personal road, and you're quoting department personnel that we can't defend or deny, so I'd ask you to
I'll just not use names? Okay,
use generics, because I don't want you quoting people.
okay. Yes, I think it does belong in executive session. So anyway, the fire chief told me personally, you did not block that fire lane. It has, I would have called you immediately and told you to move your car. And I said, that's what my understanding was. He said, you have an enforcement officer here who is telling everybody not to parallel park anywhere else. And that's a conflict of interest, big time. He said that there's commissioners who say you can't park there, period. So one minute cars are there, the next minute they're not. Last time I checked, DHCD, who is in charge of where cars are going to be, that's our policing agency, wanted us to be doing some parallel parking. It's up on the website, it's on the videos. We were going to move some cars and do that. Whether you park on grass or cut bushes down, I don't know. In the meantime, it's a bit of a mess, and I'm probably going to move my new car, which is an '07, off the premises because I'm not clear on who's towing who and who can tow, and because of a situation that happens in the housing court. So
Again, I'm asking you, what are you asking us to do? This is property that the town does not have any authority over relative to parking or any other parameters.
Well, if
We
that's-
can provide public safety, but that is our only concern. The parking spaces and the privileges of the tenants is not under our control. So I don't know what you're asking our involvement for.
Well, one thing is I expect to have a confirmation when I say, please confirm receipt of an email. I heard absolutely nothing from BOS or Board of Health. I got something today saying, yes, we did get that email. So I'd appreciate hearing back that people actually are getting the information, and that way I have a confirmed receipt. DHCD said to me, we're glad you were not in that car that morning, we'll be back in touch. I'm still waiting to talk with them. In the meantime, I guess what I'm thinking is, why did Mr. Brochure come up there, walk the premises a number of times, get a tree summary report? To me, it is a health and safety issue for
Well,
the elderly in the community.
I'm going to stop you there. Mr. Brochu is no longer on the board. What he did was his determination. At that time, we can't speak for him. I think he extended it as courtesy because, again, I'll go back and say, that is not town property. We have no control over that property. To judge whether trees are safe or not is a safety officer's concern, but I think he did it as a courtesy. I go back to, the question is, what are you asking us to do?
So I guess I just need to hear you say you really don't care what happens over there, and that it's a state issue, and it has nothing to do with the people that are living there.
So now you're putting words in my
No,
mouth.
I don't think-
So I will make this very clear. You have not brought anything to this board that we have any authority or control over, and you, at 2 times, and I'll make it 3, we've requested, what are you asking us to do? What action are you requesting of us?
I thought you said a minute ago something about safety.
That's correct. You haven't been specific. Are you saying that
What-
this is,
What would the proposal be then?
I don't know, you asked to see us. So, I'm confused. If,
May I just throw out one thing? A neighboring property's tree fell. So we really don't have any control on how they
Let's
make.
talk about the tree. Let's talk about a person who
Okay.
has, let's talk about something
Okay,
else.
here's the issue.
I think the
You've
email
got
said that tree was
22
safe.
parking spots and 40 people with cars. That's the issue. But again, if the state owns that property, how can we alleviate that problem? And it was, give us something to go on. But how do we make 40 cars fit into 22 spots? You know what I'm saying? I understand you want a car, I understand you own a car, I understand you believe you are entitled to a car. I get that. But how do we correct that if there's 40 cars and 22 spots? There's nothing we can do, the way I see it. If you have a great solution, tell me, and I'll be glad to listen, but I don't understand how we can make that better. The state has the problem. The state's got to make, there's either two solutions. Sell parking spots, give them out of age-based, need-based, something, but you got to lose 18 cars is the only way it makes any sense. Or expand the parking lot.
I
But
agree
other
with that.
than that, I'm not really sure, we can't build a parking lot on state property.
I know that. A
So,
long
I'm
time
not-
ago, there was supposed to be some annexation of town land on the backside of the apartment, and this was a few years ago. And there was maybe going to be some blasting going on
no,
back
I'll
there.
stop you there. You say supposed to be. There was no supposed to be. There was no consideration. It was a rumor that was running around Upton, and the blasting of that property would be so expensive that everyone said, oh my God, we're not going to do it. We are not going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to blast ledge to put in additional parking spaces for a state-owned property. We are not going to do that. So that is not correct. Your situation goes back to the fact that your dilemma is because it is state property and you're coming to us, we have no control over it. We have no way we can any way affect what's going on there. We simply cannot.
Okay, so I guess my last question is, you've got the abutting property, you've got the state property, because they own some of those trees and where the men's club plants, that's my understanding. Then you've got a process that's going to happen in either 2018 or 19. They're going to rip up the curb, they're going to get rid of a bunch of stuff.
Right.
And I've heard that, and I've known about that. So you've got the abutter, you've got the housing authority, you've got the state, and it's convoluted. It's very, I mean, now we're talking many different hands, many different lawyers, on all that kind of stuff.
And none of them involve the town of Upton. The state reconstruction of that road is an authority of the Commonwealth. It's a $11, $12, $13 million project. Once it's approved by Department of Transportation, the town loses its control over that construction. It is a state construction. The building, the housing is state. The adjacent property is owned by a private landowner, and honestly, there were no issues till somebody started making issues, and the landowner said, I've had enough, I'm putting up a barricade. So the town of Upton, to answer your question, cannot do anything to assist you with what your concerns are about parking. It's that simple.
I'm going to just close by saying I'm a plaintiff, and there are defendants. I have reported things.
You do what you have to.
You have to understand that the release of public records is that...
You don't have to educate me. I've been on this board for 30 years. I'm very clear about public records and public law. I don't need to be educated. Believe me, you have no issue before this board at this time that makes sense to anybody here. So, it's that simple.
Is that true, Gary?
Was that, we can't help you because of the property and where it happened.
Okay, then I don't know why the firemen had to come and get everything undone, and I have no idea why the crime scene tape is still there, and that stuff is gonna stay right
It's up to the
there.
state to come clean that up, and I'm not sure why the fire department did what they did.
I
know where I work, we would not have done what they did.
Yes. I think we're clear. We've addressed where we sit on this issue, but thank you for coming in. Here's your pictures.
I don't see that Board of Health as being any help.
Well, you
whatsoever.
can say what you want, but thank you for coming in. Okay, the board, any other questions in the audience? There being none, the board is going to go in executive session, and let me make sure I read it correctly. We'll first go in executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, Exception Number 2, to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel. All those in favor say aye.
Gary Darty, aye.
Steve Battalion, aye?
Robert Fleming, aye. We are in executive session. Thank you.